So we're at the Wilderness Gathering in West Moyle. Are we in Dorset or are we in Wiltshire?
We're in Wiltshire.
Oh.
I almost spat my coffee out then.
We've got other people here, so it's not just two voices you're going to hear. There's lots of. I'm hoping you can hear us through all the rattling, but we've got. No, it's fine. We've got. What do you want to introduce?
Who are you?
I'm Kay Watts from Holly and Hawthorne in Somerset, Chester Mallet.
And I'm Adrian Goodhand from Coast and Forest Education based in Dorset.
And we're all here doing one stall together for the Forest School. What's the official? Hang on, I'll read the banner. Forest School Association South. Is it Southwest Group? Southwest Division.
Southwest. Affiliated
League.
to the FSA. League Division Championship.
Yeah.
Premier.
We're going to take on the Northeast. Who's in the Northeast? Do we know anyone in the Northeast?
Northwest, I know. Lily Horseman.
Oh, okay. Right. Now, heads down. Heads down. Heads down, guys.
Don't fight her. No.
We're fine.
Back in the bunker.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're all here and we're trying to talk to people about the Forest School Association and with the, should we say, the lofty aim of being able to point people to their local forest school.
Yeah.
That was one of the aims.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why we were here. Spread the word.
Well, you've been here before, haven't you?
Yeah, so I've been coming probably about 5 or 6 years, and I noticed that we had a lot of forest school leaders come up to us with the Somerset stall here, and we couldn't always give them information because they were in different areas to us. And so there was a potential to be able to put people in touch with their local forest school. So we had the interest, but they couldn't, necessarily, too far away from us.
Yeah. And then that's one of the goals, isn't it, of the because we have county leaders, or county reps, who in theory are directing people within the county. And so we're kind of hoping, because Wiltshire sits quite comfortably between, what are we in between? We're not in between it, but we're very close to Somerset, aren't we?
Yeah.
Very close to, in Wiltshire, very close to, Dorset can't be far from here.
No.
Dorset is.
It's like 2 miles that way.
Oh, is it really? Are we right in the corner?
It's
I see. But it's also, we come kind of to have a small scale forest school gathering of us as leaders to chew the fat and agree with each other on why we're great. Generally what happens.
That didn't take very long though, did it?
No, we all know. Well, it would be, but somebody keeps missing the gatherings, and
I'm working. I won't be in the next one
It's
either.
important to get together with other forest.
it is. Maybe we can convince Adrian that
You used to
over
come
the
to
next.
all of them, and then
Only if you could pay me the lost wages I don't get for that day not working.
Well, that is true, isn't it? That doing them on, so they tend to be Friday evening through to Sunday, and there are lots of people that end up coming sort of late Saturday morning and then having to shoot quite early. But I don't know that there's a better system than that.
No.
I think that is just
No,
the way the world
I've managed to get to, I don't know, probably the last 6 or 7, I suppose. And it's just this spring one I just missed down at Stewart's. I'm going to miss this autumnal one, but I'm hoping that I've cleared my diary for next year's. So we're that organised that I think we're down in Cornwall for next spring.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a May weekend in spring.
That is good. I do often feel it doesn't affect us. I mean, Devon's quite big, but we're right on the inland edge of Devon. But people in Cornwall, it's a hell of a trek out of Cornwall. It's hard just to get out of Cornwall. Then
And then
Devon is 400 miles wide, across it, and it's.
we have trekked down to Cornwall before, haven't we?
Yeah, we did the trek to Cornwall before, and Sarah's and Megan and Scott Adventures. Claire, she's come up a few times, so Sarah's very good, but Claire's got a young child, so we try and move them around. So last autumn one was in Dorset, that was the first one we'd held in Dorset. So we do try and move about. I know Stuart's done a few. Halliwoods, who've done
It's
quite a
slightly
few
different,
campsites.
isn't it? I would say the Southwest compared to other than maybe Scotland, geographically, I would say the southwest is the least well connected and the most sporadic in terms of population, but also in terms of it takes us ages to drive around the southwest. We're not, we've got one motorway cutting right through the middle of Devon, but you branch off of that more than a couple of miles, and it's very, very tricky to get anywhere. But I do think it's worth the Trek L and the investment. I think if nothing else to kind of get out, it's equivalent of like getting out of your own head.
Yes.
Getting out and meeting other people, and particularly for us, so Gemma and I haven't been doing this comparatively. We are babies to Forest School.
Well, you are age-wise anyway. But old enough to be your dad. That shocked me last night.
I mean, before I felt quite isolated, and going to these gatherings and finding out about the Southwest gatherings, it gave you other people to talk to. They might have been through the same thing as you, or they might have had a different perspective than you might have, and you felt less isolated, because sometimes, I know you two work together, but Adrian and I, we work on our own, and that can be a quite isolating thing, and you do question, am I making the right decisions? It's nice to have someone to talk to and discuss these things with, and so the skill share was lovely as well. I learned a lot, especially in the first 5 that I went to, but just like you said, Adrian, earlier, we go for the discussion now, because it's just nice to be able to talk to other people about it. And
I guess the other side of the coin of the Southwest being sparse is that we can come into each other and say, what does your booking system look like, or what does this look like? And it's not like we're down the road from each other and doing in any competition whatsoever. You can comfortably have conversations and not feel like you've got to protect your USPs and oh god, and if they do what I do, and then you just go, cool,
and like you said, because it's spread out in the way it is geographically, that's probably one of the reasons that people do feel more isolated as well, and coming together and getting that advice from other people.
But I mean, the first one that I went to, I sort of rocked up thinking, they're all going to know loads more than I do. I've only been doing it a short while, and who am I to rock up? And it wasn't like that at all. So anybody who's sort of worried about that shouldn't be.
Yeah. But not at all.
No, I mean, I worked in a really large organisation at the time when I started, and although I was working in Hampshire, I was living in Dorset, and even in that large organisation, and there were many of us delivering for a school, I still felt isolated, because the people in my office didn't really know what I did, and until I got together with my other sort of practitioners in the same organisation, I was even isolated at that point. And I remember coming back from that first meeting I went to thinking, oh god, so much has been put to bed about, how do you deal with that? And everybody's dealing with the similar things, or like you said, Lewis, how do you deal with that group? Does anybody else have that problem with working with that age group? Or how did you deal with that situation when the child decided to do that? Somebody somewhere at some point has probably done something similar. That's what I did. And you go, oh.
And the freedom from judgment of I think we've all had senior leadership teams when you've been teaching who say all the right things of, you can come to me with anything and just let me know, but if you're there going, I don't know how to deal with this kid or whatever, sometimes it's really nice to talk to people who don't know your group at all and don't know your community, and just completely anonymously go, you don't know this child, so let me put forward what they're displaying, rather than you talk to someone who knows the kid because they teach them maths and they go, what you do is you do X, Y and Z, and actually you want to go, no, I want someone that's sharing that's going to approach it from the same ethos as me.
Exactly.
And that's been, and also there's quite a lot of people that I seem to talk to at the gatherings who, a bit like you were saying, they are in already quite a big group. So I'm thinking Dave Morgan is in a massive chain of nurseries, but every time I've come up, he's said it's really relaxing for him, because although he's in a big organisation, he's constantly having to explain his rationale and constantly having to rehash why he's doing that stuff, and justification, and then to come and talk to people who you go, we're all on the same,
Yeah.
to a greater or less. Let's say we're in a narrow band of the spectrum. I'm not going to say we're all
driving the same
doing
way.
exactly the same thing, but
Our understanding of what we're trying to achieve should be the same, hopefully.
yeah.
Our ethos is alien to some people, you know.
Oh, very.
And when we meet with other forest school leaders, we all understand it. Like you said, we don't necessarily do it in the same way. We put our own personalities into it, but we know our basics, you know, and what we're trying to achieve.
And you know, you sort of, when you're telling a story, you know that the other person will know why that was frustrating.
Yeah.
You don't have to explain, like, that was frustrating because I didn't want them to ask me a question, or that was, you know,
right.
you kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
It's implied.
It's implied.
You don't have to fill the gaps in. People just know what you're striving to achieve with that group or that child in particular, that learner. It doesn't have to be children.
And as we said yesterday, there's definitely something, well, we said, didn't we? We didn't show whether this type of work attracts a certain type of person, or this type of work creates a sort of type of person where we are all a bit strange and spend time either with a small group or essentially on our own out in nature doing things at a completely different pace to the rest of the world.
Not within the mainstream.
And but whether we were saying, weren't we, that whether do you get pulled towards this career because you're already that type of person?
I reckon there might be a seed there of that type of person, and then it allows to blossom, isn't it?
And there might be some people it's the other way around, but I think mainly, there is a seed there that people get pulled towards it because.
I mean, I was already doing environmental education, but very formally, when I took on a role, and they said, within the first few days, we've got a place for you on a forest school training. Do you want to take it? And I was like, well, I've heard about it. Some of the things I've heard I'm not particularly au fait with.
What? Do you remember what they were?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wood elves, imps and fairies.
You went down with that.
I had a science background. That's what I did. I did an environmental science degree. So
you've learned that they do exist now.
I have.
You've come
They're
around.
up there with aliens and alternative universes.
Exactly.
That's a conversation for another time.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'll go and see what it's all about. And then the first day, it was raining, a bit like yesterday here, putting shelters up, and then it was actual practical crafts and sawing and coppicing, and the woodland management side really switched me on, which I sort of had a bit of a smattering from my degree about. So I think you're already kind of drawn in that direction. And being a trainer as well, it's interesting seeing people who arrive and maybe aren't quite there just yet. We very often see the people who've been sent to do the training have a very different outlook on the people who've decided to come and do the training, and who's funding that training. And I was saying to Kay this morning that we trained somebody who certainly in that first 5 days of training was still very formal in their approach, but at the end of it, and at the very end when we had the portfolio, it was wow, they've come a long way, and play was much more an important part. They understood it was much more about allowing those children to develop their own ideas and follow their own lines of inquiry. And interestingly, that lady's now actually working for me a little bit part-time anyway, so it's kind of gone full circle. But it chicken or egg, isn't it? Which comes first, the interest.
There was an ed psych that suggested that I might want to train as forest school, and I remember her explaining it to me, and me thinking, that's just like my
childhood. Were you under her, or was
Yes, yeah.
So I was working with children in schools with, social, emotional, behavioural difficulties.
So you're working alongside her?
And she would come into the school to give advice.
Right.
So she said, how about, training to do forest school? And she explained it, and I'm like, that's my entire childhood was like that, and I thought, really, really interested. And now, and obviously then it was to work with just those type of children, but I've since realised that actually it needs to be for every child, and not exclusive to anyone really.
Well, and some of those techniques are applicable anyway, aren't they?
Yes, and so I kind of went into it with this real vision in my head of it was going to be a little bit sort of, we're all in the woods, and just like I remember getting a lot of joy out of that when I was young.
Well, that's interesting because we were talking a bit about it earlier on before we started the podcast, and I remember part of the training that I did, the training that I have done when I was being trained in the training subsequently has opened up lots of memory doors for me of things I remember being at school. Not all good, but one of them was, being sat there with the careers advice and using a very early computer. and because I am that age, and getting the old
putting the coal in
and clicking the abacuses across, thanks to this, and one of the readouts was a countryside ranger, and I had absolutely no idea what one of those was, and nobody could send me on that right path.
Was it you that got Gravedigger?
No.
Somebody I know got Gravedigger, but not on that thing.
We always got probation officer. There was clearly a shortage of those at the time, so everybody's number one job was probation officer, and then it was whatever. Yeah.
So how did you end up with this then?
The teacher was on there, and so I was teaching for 9 years, and then I think the first I heard about forest school was a friend of mine who'd moved from Bristol to Frome kind of area, and she said that her child was at forest school, and I was like, forest school? What is that? Just those two words together were like, for me, like, ooh, that sounds really exciting. And she sort of explained to me what it was, and then I did a bit of research but didn't know any forest schools near me at all. I had no personal experience of it. And then sort of had this kind of idea of escaping teaching when it became
absolutely
the way it became, and I sort of thought, oh, that's my escape route, that's definitely what I'll do. And then I saw that he was down the road, and I thought, oh, I can't open another forest school.
What a prick.
I'll have to either work with this guy or not do it. So
that's it. So we've had many years, and it's just because I was there first. We're not actually friends.
10 minutes down the road from me. Who'd have thought it? Darn it.
And you've had years to get a head start on me.
I know, man.
Well, talking of making friends, I mean, both Adrian and I went to the second ever Southwest Forest School gathering, and that's where we met. And we still we're still friends. I'd like to say that. I hope you say that quietly. But
I'll add to the podcast later.
Those relationships last, and there's people that go regularly. You meet them regularly over and over again, and catch up with them, and so that, again, not just a discussion on advice, but just catching up with people. And seeing
sometimes it's a bit like those. Do people still do like round robins at Christmas? This is what little job. It's almost like we all meet up and you go, oh, how did that thing go? You were just about to open you were going to do a home ed thing, weren't you? Or did you buy that bit of wood or whatever? And it's a nice thing to, because I think doing 2 a year is a nice length of time to not be on top of each other and go all the time, what did you do?
Enough time has passed,
and also to have the conversations that we have face to face. Admittedly, it's a smaller group, but I would say we always end up having a conversation about things that have been talked about in the bigger Facebook groups, positively or negatively. Whether we all come together and go, Jesus, did you see what an absolute shitstorm that was? And we all go, I didn't touch that well, I wasn't involved.
It wouldn't involve GLOVES, would it?
No,
I read it, but I didn't comment.
But stuff that you can have a conversation face to face.
It's a great jumping off point.
That you can't necessarily do.
No.
And like you were saying, when you went to your first one and you were like, they were all going to know so much more than me. I definitely think, maybe because I'm a little bit, somewhere there's a little bit of a like nerdy, swatty person inside. I think I felt more comfortable because I was always in that Facebook group, and I was pretty confident that when I arrived, I know that people are going to probably talk about gloves on this hand and whether you should kneel by the fire, and whether those Facebook groups, even if you don't, even if you're not an active participant, they are useful to know what's in the zeitgeist. So then when you meet face to face, you go, what? And then you meet and you kind of go, even if you overhear someone talking, you go, I like the sound of what you're saying about that. I might ask your opinion on X. And then there's some people you meet face to face at the gatherings and you go, actually, we're going to go in different ways on this. And
you find your tribe.
Even in such a small group. That's what I mean. That's why I kind of didn't want to say, you meet up and we're all doing exactly the same thing, because we're all closer, but you definitely come to the gatherings and go, hey, I'm going to talk to these people, and hey.
But you can learn a lot from both.
Oh, absolutely.
From people who are like and not like you,
I have to say, certainly, I've developed a greater degree of pragmatism towards certain things that I possibly at the beginning would have been a bit more dogmatic about. Certain topics or areas of discussion, and having spoken to other people, it's because you do work on your own, so you are following a line that you think is maybe right, or
quite often what you got from training, whatever you got taught in training. It's a shame that there's not part of the level 3s that goes because nobody would, because we all want to protect our USPs and we all want to do. But it's a shame that there isn't a go and do some mentoring in a few different places.
We talked about it.
Yeah, we did talk about it. It is a good idea.
Hard.
But it's can I afford to travel? Can I afford to take time off work to go and see somebody else? And I have been to a couple, and it's been great. And I've seen a couple of trainers working, and they've been very sharing. But it can be costly if you are, up to the hilt with what you're doing to actually take some time out.
But that's one of the advantages of all meeting up is if you went to, so if I just went to go and see Kay's provision, then I'm doing all that travelling, and not that you're not worth the travel, but what I mean is I'm getting one more opinion. But if you can do the same amount of travel and go and meet 30 forest school leaders, it is a lot more bang for your buck, and going that's it's a bit of a hive mind, because you see stuff bubble up to the top, and we all do agree on this, and people go, okay, let's say get a bit more kind of, my training maybe wasn't the most appropriate.
Well, I've had trainees come to my sessions, and there's always a risk, because they could then, if they're close enough, then go and set up quite near you, like you said, and and it's quite tricky, but it's also beneficial, and it's beneficial to them. And had one trainee who went and he did a bit of time with several forest schools, if you see what I mean, and got quite a good perspective, for himself about what he wanted. So there's a positive side to it, and there's a side to it where we might feel a bit nervous about having somebody coming along, and where they might take that after.
I'm always open door policy.
I try to have an open door policy despite my fears. You see what I mean?
No, I understand that. I'm always happy for people to come and see what I'm doing.
I think sorry.
No, I was just going to say on that sort of point, the sort of thrust of what we've been talking about is the gatherings. It would be lovely to see more people and new people. As much as it's a hive mind and it's great, we do get that sort of hardcore group who, I know that they're going to be there, and that's a bit of a shame. So if there is anybody out there who wants to come along, who is trained or very close to finishing their training, then please do get in touch.
I do know that this is now. I've talked to some people who their trainers. Actually, it was Lily are recommending that they churn through this back catalogue. So if you've just got here and it's 2034, then you need to listen to podcasts quicker. But yes, if we're still alive,
local group.
Do go to your local group.
Not Southwest.
And if you're in the other countries, because about half of the people that listen are in the States and Canada, so do set up. I know it's further for people in the States to travel and stuff, but even if they're Skype things or they're smaller Facebook groups or stuff, there is definitely an advantage to
huge value.
We tried to do that. We wanted to do that kind of messaging thing with somebody in Canada, didn't we? Do you remember we had a message? We were like, then we couldn't really work out how to do it with kind of permission from parents of children who were going to be in the videos and all that and also time differences, which is a real shame we didn't manage to make it happen. But it would have been cool.
One thing that's always been in the back of my mind, and I haven't done it, and now probably suggesting that somebody will go ahead and do it anyway, would almost be a bit like a sort of live drop-in of an evening once a month or something, where there's like an open Skype channel or something, and a bit like a live podcast or something. We just sort of topic of the day, and what do people want to talk about, or I've never really sort of got around to doing it, but
I think you could very easily set something like that up on Twitch, where you would have a Skype conversation between, say, the three of us, and then you'd have a written chat next to it for everybody that then we can flick between the two. That's definitely
that's a
something
really good way of doing it, actually.
Maybe that'd be a way to include international people in.
See, he's done it again, Kay. The young brain has brought in the new technology. Us old decrepit folk who he's brought it to the table again.
So the internet, what it is, right? I've plugged it in.
Is it faster than a pigeon?
Don't poke the bear in the zoo, Lewis. However, I'm remaining silent.
It is nice, however, to see people face to face.
Definitely, and
and there's been a couple of Yesterday we had an inquiry, and today we had an inquiry from people who are found out how we have our Southwest gatherings and wanting to know a bit more about it so they could set it up in their area. And we had somebody saying that they'd like to come to our next Southwest gathering to see what we're doing. So that's nice. So people, whether they're wherever they are, can still think about doing that in their area. There's some value to that as well.
I love seeing other people's sites as well, even if they're not running activities there, just seeing how people have practically got over things like toilets and signage and seating and all those things. Oh, okay, that's a new idea. I remember after we went to Haller, that's when you were like, we need some delicious signs, because Haller's got all those lovely the tree pirate things.
I feel like whether I need to do it secretly or not, but whenever I go to the gatherings, I end up taking photos of loads of stuff and then almost secretly squirreling them and sending them to Gemma and going, hey, let's do one of these. Look, they've done a thing like that. Let's make these.
That's how I got my kitchen shelter. I saw something at Youngwood, Jenny Archer's Youngwood, and I'm like, I had a gazebo before that, which just got buckled every time it got windy, and I'm like, that's what I need to build, something like that. And then I did my own version of it.
Which bit?
Well, it's just like 4 poles, and then like a roof pitched in one direction over the top. And hers was grass growing on the top, but mine's under quite sort of under cover of trees, and so I have actually got corrugated plastic on top to let the light in, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to see really, and stuff like that. So I kind of did a version of hers, my version. But you see other people's ideas and you think, I can use it or adapt it. Or
and even if they're not, even if they're not forest school sites, we went to Hakeford Woods. Is it Hakeford? It's the Scout Hakeford Woods Scout thing, and going to the scouting one and seeing the level that Scouts set their camps up to, and I came back and I'm always worried that we've put too much stuff in the woods. That balance between, have we built now too many things and it's stopped being. And I sometimes I look back at pictures of the first year of me running forest school and I go, Jesus, I had like a bag and a fire on the ground and it was great. And now look at it, I've got a kitchen and I've got 4 toilets and we haven't got 4 toilets, but you know what I mean. You build all this stuff.
I know exactly what you mean. I've sat there and looked at things and thought, I'm not going to build anymore.
But then, so we went to the scout camp, and because the scouting, if we're, and this isn't good for a podcast, but if we're here and the scouts were here, it was concrete breeze block fire pits and complete pitched roofs, and I came back to our woods and I suddenly went, but that roof is made out of a wobbly piece of beech and we've just kind of tied down to it. This is nothing. We've
far more in keeping and less impact. Like you said, I think it was yesterday, if heavens forbid I had to walk away, I'd only have to take a few structures down, a few bits and pieces. The rest of it would collapse and rot away quite quickly. I wouldn't have to ship out concrete blocks and
dig out nails and
Do you have the site, Adrian?
I'm peripatetic. So I have one site that I use quite frequently in Hampshire, North Andover. But again, I ship everything in, ship everything out. I've got a composting loo that was a log store. I've got a couple of sort of temporary log stores, but that's it, and a seating area. It's all gone. Swings come down, ropes come down, everything comes home.
I think there's benefits to both. I think sometimes people are very desperate to get a site and to build things and to put stuff in.
Yes.
But I see it as I can remember really positive experiences where, because I could only take one bag, or sometimes it's school stuff, because you can only take one bag of stuff in, because physically you can only carry what a human can carry, or you can do a oneer with a trolley. But
I do like trying to do a oneer.
I did my back in. Oh my god, such a mistake.
But
I'm like oneer.
I'm in bed for the next 2 days. I can't walk. Health and safety warning, folks. Don't try and walk.
Anyway,
but having fewer stuff means that you end up either playing with nature more, or you end up being incredibly creative with what you've brought,
and more child-led,
and
you're
more
not wedded to the but I've brought this resource and we must use it today because I've just blooming lugged it from the car, so come on children, use this
but then
resource.
Equally on the other side of that, I'm so grateful that we've had our cabin, because someone's come up with an idea where they go, I want to do this in a way that looks like this, and I go, holy, there is no reason, it's probably because Gemma's hoarded it, but there is no reason that we should have that. Like, I would never have brought this to a site.
But we do have a curtain ring.
We do have a spray painted purple curtain ring with some netting hanging off it, and here you go, and they go, oh brilliant, and that's really nice to have this like Mary Poppins cabin of you name it, we can pull it out, and we can and to when you see that you met a need, you absolutely like bullseyed a need and just went like, I did that. Whether that's with loads of resources and you had the perfect one, or I had no resources and I met that need through because I had to whittle a thing and make it and show you that I could tie this rope together and put them in. I think they're equally valuable.
I did a family session and tested myself once. Took a ball of string, a knife, and we went out for walking activities as we were going. And it was great. So we ended up making quoits for throwing at things, noughts and crosses games by sort of weaving the circles and square lashing. And I even ended up using my drinking water because the kids found some charcoal and wanted to do some face paint. So my lunch water went. We used the lunchbox to mix some clay in and some water to do face trees, tree faces. And and that was a real, oh gosh, what am I going to do with nothing? Because I have become one of those, I've got bags and bags and bags of kit. But once they got going, it was a classic. At the end, sorry guys, we really do have to go now. We've got to leave.
I've got a main site, and then other sites that I work at, and one of which we have to trek 20 minutes uphill to, so you can't carry very much, especially with the very younger children. And so they. All the sites that I work at have got something different about them, and give you something different. And there's something great by not taking very much and just playing. That's really valuable. And then there's other times when I'm sat on my main site and just like got all this stuff here. And if a child comes up and says, "I want to do this," I'm like, "Yeah, I can do that." So there's so much value in all of it. And I think. There was a time when I was a bit stuck on my own site, and then I got another, job. Somebody asked me to go and do some work quite far away, and I'm like, it's almost like starting again. To kind of relearn how to just go with a few backpacks or something.
But I think we forget that we are also a resource, almost like the most important resource. So you forget that, what you're describing is. Being able to facilitate all that play and learning just because you can and you know how to do that. So especially if you're taking families on a walk like that, that's what's so inspiring. And I think you often forget that, and you're so focused on the activity and the resource and the children that you forget that actually you are an unusual person with a lot to give, because you're so focused on actually running things
and I think
that you forget that actually a lot of parents especially are kind of going, oh yeah, my forest school leader, they showed me this thing, or they gave me this new outlook on life or a new outlook on play, and you go, we are actually.
That was me.
It's not just because sometimes you sort of forget that it can't just be anyone doing the job, in some groups, some jobs you think, this group would just survive with anybody, like any person who has some experience with children could run this session and it would be the same. And then some groups you think, no, actually this is because of my relationship with these people, and it would be different if it wasn't me.
And that that's the nub of it, isn't it? I mean, we're going full circle here, as these things always tend to, but that's part of that long-term relationship, isn't it, with a group, that you've got to know them, they've got to know you. You probably wouldn't get that on a day visit, because they wouldn't know what they could come
not at all. But also on a day visit, you're only meeting them where they were that day, based on what they had for breakfast, how much sleep they had.
Their physiology.
It takes, 3 or 4 times for you to get an average of, okay, whether you're always like that, or actually, I always think that's that weird one where you go, did they have a good time? You go, well, I can't tell yet. I haven't seen the spectrum of, was today the best day they've ever had and they're quite reserved, or was today not great for them?
And I've really seen them spin out and they're having a really bad day today.
And going back to what you were saying about the leader, and I was just wondering whether there's something intangible about it, because it's not something that you could see on Pinterest or Instagram, and whether there's because that's where lots of people gather their ideas. And what can you take a picture of? You can take a picture of an end product, you can take a picture of but it's hard to take a picture of a meaningful conversation, or a game where, if you play hide and seek over 3 acres, good luck photographing that and capturing that in a way that you can bottle down and go, look, we played in scrubland for 20 minutes. But so people who are from the outside looking in, you Google forest school, what do you get? You get loads of pictures of clay acorn people that are stuck together, or a resource of, why don't you do
an outcome.
An outcome,
you know, like you said, they're intangible, some of those outcomes. You know,
And I do think
physical outcome is what you get if you do Pinterest, don't you? You get
Yes.
like a-
And, but
You get the
sometimes you can
artifact.
capture. Because sometimes I feel like a short video can capture an atmosphere. So I think sometimes there's more benefit in if you wanted to share what you were doing, get your phone out and do a 360. Just look at what the hell's going on. They're doing a fire and these guys are running around, and that to me sums up so much more than. I mean, we're guilty of doing it as well because sometimes the children really want to. But when I go through someone's Facebook like a page, and every picture is a staged hold up what you're doing and smile, that to me reeks of. Well, they won't. I say this to parents all the time when they try and interrupt their children's play and go, look at me, hold it up. I'm going to go, they're busy. He's making the thing out of clay. Leave him the f alone.
Yeah.
You're breaking all this.
Take the picture without the kid looking at you. They don't need to be looking
That's,
at you.
that's what I always try and do. I just try and walk around quietly. When they're engaged in something, just take, very often it's the back of their head and their hands and what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's, I don't want them to see them.
No.
I don't want, them to go, oh, look at me, hello,
You're right as
stage
well.
that.
I mean, I've taken photographs of things that are action that you can't really see what's happening at all in the photograph, and probably, like you said, just a short filmy thing would solve that really.
Yeah.
Be much better.
Yeah,
Just
definitely.
take
The photo persona is a completely different thing, isn't it?
It is, totally.
But I'm going to put my capitalist hat on. Sometimes a necessary evil.
Oh yes, definitely.
Sometimes
Yes,
I like to get people in and to meet them where they are. If meeting people where they are before they've come to forest school is that looks
Exciting.
cheesy
Yes,
and
you're
clean and
absolutely
nice
right.
and so
That child is happy. They are not feeling shy and scared. They are, and they're not in danger. They look happy. I'll put my child.
Or you should-
That's holiday club.
you do a video of a group that have been coming for 2 years and they are,
Feral.
whittling and feral and they've got face paint on, and then you go, okay, but I also need something that appeals to this mum with a white Land Rover that's going to arrive, and
Cutting.
if you've got a white Land Rover, take that one. But
I mean, also for
I best go cancel my order tomorrow.
some of the things that I do, like schools quite like, because there's schools by me and they quite like to see photos of what's going on. Some of them, especially more the younger children, those photos might be ticked off as part of their evidence of these children's, motor skills or whatever. And so, for a different reason, people want photographs sometimes.
Yeah.
But maybe again, a small little movie might be a little bit better.
yeah, definitely.
On some occasions.
On some occasions.
Yeah.
And that is another thing that to bring it back to meeting people at gatherings, is you start to either disassociate or it becomes a firmer thing between I follow your Facebook page, your Instagram, your whatever else it is that you put out, then you meet the actual people. And there's either a bit, sometimes there's a big dissonance of like, God, I never thought you would be like this, or you go, oh, you are exactly like you portray this, or I find that quite interesting. I find people's logos and just sort of general style guides, I find that quite interesting. Who's gone for, just because yours is on your shirt, Adrian, white with black text and clean, and who's gone for a scrawly, a lot of people use a handwriting font to be it's always Buttercup Forest Schools, or those sort of things. And what animals people choose is always really interesting, I find. Do you know?
Absolutely. I mean, I've struggled loads over my name, the Holly and Hawthorne, and but I had so many ideas about with my committee and stuff like that, and we just couldn't decide. It actually ended up that being named after my dog, who's just passed away, and her name is Holly, and so I thought I'm going to name it after her, because we couldn't come up with anything else that anybody could agree on. And then I thought, Holly and Hazel, and then I thought, that sounds like it's two women. And then I did Holly and Hawthorne, and have regretted it many times because it's so long.
Right.
And I'm like, I can't have an email address that says Holly.
It's also
Hawthorne.
too spiky. It's too spiky.
It is very spiky.
Yeah,
and
it is,
red
yeah.
berry, lots
But,
of red berry.
but holly sounds round as a word. Holly.
Yeah.
The mouthfeel of holly is round, and hawthorn is cutting. I think it works.
Yeah, that's how it ended up like that. And I just
could
thought
always-
it's a bit long, you know, sometimes.
Rebrands work.
You know, and so I've ended up with my email address being SM Forest School, SM standing for Shepton Mallet, which I'm constantly pointing out.
Right.
That's Shepton Mallet, SM Shepton Mallet, nothing else.
Aye.
And yeah, because, you know, obviously Holly and Hawthorne was a bit long, and I just...
We had the other day, and I got
Nightmare.
very proprietorial about it. Actually, I had two in the space of a week.
I've had one too. I know what you're going to say.
Somebody came up to me and went, "Oh yeah, we went to one of them Children of the Forests up in and named somewhere else." And I was like, "We are not sellotape, right? I shall not have my brand name taken." Did you have someone?
Yeah. So somebody camped next to me a couple of weeks ago in Cornwall and pulled up beside me and was like, "I do not believe this." And I was like, "Oh, what? You're scaring me." She's like, "I camped next to you last summer in Charmouth and I can't believe it. And now we're in Cornwall and I'm not even from round here. And you showed me your Kelly kettle and I talked to you about it." I was like, "No recollection. Sorry, but okay, I believe you." And she was like, "Yeah, because I heard all about you guys on the radio." And I was like, "Really?" So yeah, because there's quite a few Children of the Forest, aren't there? And so I heard about, you know, it's like a franchise, isn't it? I was like, no, it is
It's
not.
really.
Damn it.
Sorry.
So who are they?
Who are
Well, it's no. It's not that there are other Children of the Forest. It's that people, I think, are going
It's-
Forest School, Children of the Forest, and
Right.
just
And
School,
making their own-
children,
just
yeah.
you know. So one of the ones that I realised someone was doing was I won't say, but it was you know, like Shepton Marett Forest School. It was
Yeah.
a place named Forest School, but they had just pieced it together and just gone, yeah, they're all Children of the Forests. They're this and they're this and they're this, and it was a weird, because did you get the wave of like, and then you then went no.
The rug was firmly pulled from under you. when
We
you
were on
realised-
the radio, were we? No, we weren't.
Oh, I meant the mild pride of like,
Yeah.
oh, thank you for thinking that,
recognise.
we're big enough and that we might be that. No, wait a minute. I don't want this to happen.
I think that is the thing with branding, is that if you make your website and stuff too good, then you somehow appear like too professional, which is a weird thing to say about Forest School. Do you know what I mean? Like too corporate-y, too big, when people assume that like
There's a
you've got
fine
20
line.
people
Yeah,
working for you and
Yeah.
blah-de-blah-de-blah.
Don't realise you're working on a budget,
Exactly.
shoestring or whatever.
Exactly, yeah.
That's a very fine line.
Yeah, that's true actually.
But I do think that's one of the. So we've been said a few times that the thing that is good about Forest School is that we all do Forest School, but we all do it differently, and sometimes it's through an academic or an educational idea that you believe that I don't believe, or that you have. But I'd say 75% of it at least is just, this is your personality, this is my personality.
Yeah,
It's a
sure.
bit like teaching, though.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, teachers do put their own
disagree.
personality into it. I mean, some less so, and some. But then that's part of your personality. If you, in a way, if you sort of don't put your personality into
Well,
it.
I think
if you see what I mean.
I disagree, because I think that was the thing that pushed me out of teaching, was that I was in not in so many words, but I think I was being given the message from different people. You are a curriculum machine. You mustn't
That's because
do.
the time you went into
Yeah, I
it.
You
think
mustn't
it's
do
got
it
more
at
and more and more like that, you know. I mean, obviously, I started working in schools
know.
over 20 years ago, and even if I think of the teachers that taught me, they all had very different personalities.
Well, this is what I've,
Yeah.
not to make myself sound like a child, but this is what I've heard, is that teaching was a kind of, you stand at the front, you decide what your class need, and you go for it. But my only experience of teaching is
very modern.
very, here is the curriculum, and have you ticked all these boxes by the end? I don't care if they're happy. If, you know, I wasn't going to get chewed out if my class went home crying. I was going to get chewed out if I didn't cover all 3 sciences this week. You know, it's that was my experience.
Does anyone know any teachers that have stayed and gone, like, I'm going to stay in this broken system and
Yeah, I do
and
actually.
stick it out?
I don't know how they do it, to be honest with you.
So I felt guilty about leaving for that reason, and I do often have daydreams about what kind of teacher I'd be now if I went back, and how much I would, because obviously you'd want to go.
No one would employ you. I mean this in the nicest way possible. You would not pass an interview.
I
You
might.
wouldn't, because you're too.
I might.
You would. You're too strong-willed.
I
you're too strong. I think I agree with everything you would say.
But if you could go back into teaching and you could
I think
bring all of your forest school ethos with you, and how far you could push the boundaries, because
stealth forest school, you mean?
I daydream about like being the most awesome teacher ever and just like mucking stuff up.
You want to do school? You want to do School of Rock, but with forest school. You pack all the trees away when the head teacher comes.
Is it not then based really on the ethos of the school? You know, there are those out there, and I have read about them. You know, and there is one in Somerset, isn't there?
Yeah, that's
two ladies
female
came
head teacher.
Oh no!
Where it is.
She's really good. It's really about the senior management team in a school.
You know,
school, do you know?
I can't remember. They were at the gathering.
Yes, they were, and I can't remember.
They were at the conference. So apologies if you're listening.
They were at Cherry Wood last time we went there because they sat and did a talk about it. And they're recommended provider as well.
They're on the list. Yeah, they were one of the first schools, if not the first school.
But that's because the head teacher has that ethos, and so the whole school has that ethos. You know, and that's where it's got to come from up there. If it doesn't come from up there, it's, you know.
That was part of when I went into teaching, and as I was thinking about leaving teaching, I was being told. I'll say rightly or wrongly, I was told as a man in primary education, you give it 5 to 7 years and you could be ahead if you ticked through. And I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that was the message I was getting. But it was 7 years. So I might have got to head teacher and then been able to go, right, we're going to do a forest school. But how much of you is going to get beaten and worn away in 7 years? Where you go, actually, I've got it's a bit like.
You get moulded into the corporate view.
Well, I feel bad for politicians because I feel like politicians, personally new ones, must go in. So I'm going to change this, I'm going to change this, and then day one in power, and someone goes, no, you can't do that because of this and this and this. And I worry that that's what happens. You know, people go into teaching and getting that right. Not even head teaching. You know, I went into teaching with this like. I'm going to teach like this, and I'm going to be Patch Adams, and I'm going to do all this stuff. And then actually, no, we've got a literacy scheme that we bought 8 years ago, and this is the lesson plans, and you teach those things.
It just wasn't like that when.
Not to start with.
I mean, that was a punishment for your class. Like I remember I had this really, really unruly class who I had all this great, amazing ideas and stuff, and then sitting down with my mentors in my first year of teaching, I was saying, they're just not listening to me, they're just being really destructive. I've tried every kind of behavioural technique thing that I've learned, and she was like, okay, well, it's time to get tough with them. You get the textbooks out and you do that, and you say, I've come up with these great ideas and you're not listening to it, and so you are turn to page 45, and that's what you do. And that was the punishment for the class until they could do that, and then you go, okay, now we'll chuck those back on the shelf where they've been gathering dust, and now we'll do all the fun stuff. But now it is like that is what teaching is like. This is the PowerPoint that you teach, you know. And that was secondary, so it was a bit different. But I do daydream about if you could, even going back into like secondary English and drama, but bringing the ethos of forest school to it.
Sure.
I still think you could, and it's
I think
just about it being
English and drama might be the easiest route in. Not to belittle them as a subject, but they perhaps are the most. You know.
I think the power is with parents because it's what they want that often drives things forward.
But there's no voice for them. Like I think all of the parents
and
that
there
I
is
know,
because there's so many schools out there saying they do forest school to tick the box, and that's obviously come from the parents that are.
And I think we're having an influence, having a kindergarten that we're sending children that are. I would say the most common phrase that I would use when we were sending off this data to the primary school. You know, you do the handover data if this is, and you know, it's either knows their own mind or is confident in telling you their needs, to the point where. But that's phrased as some people are going to see that the children we send out as a little bit arrogant, but only because they're going to go, I don't want to sit down, because they're used to an educational setting with us where they're going,
I don't want to do that right now.
Well, I don't need to do that. Is that important? You know, and you know, you were saying your daughter questioned what was going on at her preschool, but in a good way, because she only questioned it with you, didn't she? She did come home and
well, she just brought it up as a subject. Was saying, you know, at school we're told that like not to sort out the problems ourselves. I was like, what do you mean? She said, well, if somebody's having a problem or you're having a disagreement, then or an argument about something, then we have to go to the teacher. But at kindergarten, we sort it out ourselves, and we tell each other what we want to do, or say, stop that, I don't like it. So I was doing that and saying, Billy, stop that because Jane says she doesn't like it, or Jane, tell him, stop it, I don't like it. And the teacher said, no, don't do that, don't get involved, come and tell me. And I just thought that was interesting that she noticed like that level of detail. It's like, oh, this is a fundamental principle that is different.
That's amazing.
So I think my hope then would be that, like you're saying, the tick box stuff, that if more children come from a kindergarten where, okay, I'm going to put my big head hat on, we're doing full fat jersey,
full fat gold top,
we're as forest schooly as you can get,
artisanal bread,
go into a school that allegedly does forest school. Even if the parents don't, I'm pretty confident that some of our 5-year-olds would go to a school and go, well, I've had children that come to on Saturday groups move to a primary school and go, Miss, this is not forest school. I know forest school. It's not like this. And I honestly could have, when she came in and told me, she went, I got told off at school because I told them it wasn't fun. I could have picked her up and hugged her. I could have just, I did say, I'm so proud of you. Please don't leave. It just was the most amazing thing. And I think that might be one of the ways that goes through, is perhaps we can't do it, top down. Maybe we have to get the kids in, to go in and go,
this isn't right, miss.
And
enough of them go in, and the teacher suddenly says, why have we got 6 kids in this year's income that are saying, this is how you're supposed to do it?
And how telling is it if you are doing, let's say, forest school that involves clipboards and what you might not call, that we would all agree is not forest school. How telling is it if a child comes in and challenges it, and a child can go, actually no, miss, sir, forest school is supposed to be child-led, and it's supposed to have this, and it's supposed to be like that, and that what? How are you going to respond to that as a teacher? Shut up, I've done the training. Anybody's going to look. That's.
I suspect there are people out there that would.
Do you think?
Yeah, I do. Sadly. Yeah. Well, we know that some people don't like being. Undermined is the word that's come to mind, but it's not right. But challenged by a child,
Yeah, that's true.
And saying, well, who are you to come and question what I've planned and I've got booked.
That's the forest school ethos. How dare you challenge my planning? That's going to be our new tagline. Scrap what we've got now. I'm going to feed children of the forest. How dare you question my planning?
Brilliant.
But I do think it's important that we keep doing gatherings, and there is a collective voice with maybe the potential. I don't know that we're meeting it right now. We're not living up to our potential right now as a group, but that there is, that it doesn't just fade, that it doesn't just peter into nothing, that as long as some of us keep trying to do this collective, but we need to keep this collective thing going, of us all going, actually we are going to keep pushing it and keep, and it's something, like we said at the start, it helps that we're geographically spread out. If we were all in Cornwall trying to push this message, it might come off as that's what they do in Cornwall, but by spreading out, we're actually presenting this very wide but very united front of, hopefully you can talk to any of these,
that's interesting, and we've very cleverly come back around to what we were talking to at the beginning.
I've done podcasts before.
You have. It shows, it tells. And it came to mind earlier on when we were talking about the essence of and the spirit of what we do in the Southwest, because I do think we do it very well. Why isn't that conveyed nationally, and why don't people understand when they hear about what Forest School is, still don't have an understanding of what it is that we're trying to push forward? Where's that falling apart, which might be a thread for a different podcast? I don't know that we've got the time to do it today.
No, I think it's an interesting question. I mean, the immediate thought I have is maybe there's geographically something that the Southwest could all agree on that the Northeast wouldn't agree on it. And like we're saying, all forest schools are different. Yeah. That actually all geographic regions are different. Well,
there are lots of schisms within it, aren't there? There are lots of people who don't actually necessarily like the forest school associations. There's lots of practitioners who go, not having anything to do with them. I'm my own thing and I'm going to do my own thing. So I think if that fundamental split wasn't there, then perhaps things would feel a bit more centralised. If everyone was kind of going, we're part of we do forest school, therefore we're part of the FSA, then if practitioners can't even agree, then the general public aren't going to get the same message from
It's
everybody.
not actually a governing body as
No,
such.
it's
is it?
not.
No, because it doesn't write
It's
the-
not a union, it's not a governing body, it's
And
just
schools won't see a reason really on the whole to be part of it. They'll want to do it their way, like you said, and then you'll have other independents that might want to do it their way. Wildlife Trust will want to do it their way and put, like maybe nature in it, or whatever. I think that's, can be sometimes a plus that people, they go and put their own personalities or own stamp on it, if you see what I mean, but also can be maybe a thing that is why it's not consistent.
Yes.
Forest school is.
Well, yes,
not
I mean,
consistent.
going back to the very beginning, when I first encountered it, and the lady who was leading was working with a lot of preschoolers, and there were those wood elves and imps and lots of storytelling in it. And that initially to me was, well, if that's what forest school is, then I'm not interested. And it wasn't until I did my own training where, oh, it's not part of it at all, it's just what she's brought.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can bring your own interests to it. Yeah.
And I think that's something that perhaps not enough people are open about, in saying this is our type of forest school, because there's this
Our interpretation.
because there's this weird thing of, well, some people, I think people get a whiff now that because there was something in the Guardian, wasn't there, that was is your forest school just a gimmick?
Yeah.
And so I
Yes,
think there is a bit of a zeitgeist
That's quite
about
an interesting
of
Yeah,
there
that was
is
a good piece actually.
there is a conversation out there of not all forest schools are forest schools, so perhaps there's then a worry that if I say this is Lewis and Gemma Forest School, what people might hear is, well, it's not real forest school. Do you know what I mean? Whereas actually, in the Venn diagrams, we're just a smaller circle inside the bigger forest school circle. And
I guess that's where something like the principles come in.
yeah,
We've got our personality, but we're still meeting the principles.
But some people don't even agree with the principles. I have met people who are like, no.
Yeah.
Why do I have to adhere to those? That's just people. That's just rules. That's people telling me what to do. I don't believe in that. It's what I want to do.
people that don't feel that they go far enough. There was the whole thing, wasn't there? Of they had quite a long time trying to agree what was the minimum session occurrence. Was it going to be 6 weeks, 12 weeks? All this stuff, and I think you ask all of us, and everyone's going to get
different answer.
Longer and longer and longer. But unless you start giving people a percentage score of, you are 85% forest school, you are 60% forest school, you are 112% forest school.
You have to come to something that the majority of people are able to achieve in this climate.
And that doesn't devalue that. What's the minimum that we all agree is?
Yes, exactly. And I think that's what the principles are about. And I'm sure they took a lot to thrash out what they were actually going to be, but I remember some people say, when they said 6 weeks isn't long enough, I know some people who really protested because they're like, well, we won't ever be able to allow to do anything more than that. But really, I personally feel that you've got to try.
And I think a lot of that comes down to what you feel is achievable, and whether the goal of those principles is to set an absolute minimum or an absolute gold standard. And I think that's sometimes where people feel maybe shortchanged is the word. Is there isn't much recognition of differentiation between somebody that runs a 6 week half term. Well, no, what is it? 12, isn't it? It's the minimum. So let's say it's a 12 week. They do a term with each class, and they have 2 teachers, and there isn't, on the face of it, a way to see a difference between that and somebody who runs, like us. They don't end. Ours are perpetual
until they leave you.
Until they leave us, and we're in our own woodland, and we have a super high ratio, and someone gets the same sticker. I know it's not stickers, but you know the point I'm making when
they
get the same certificate.
Yeah.
Yes.
But what has happened, because they put it at 12 weeks and they've made that decision on that base, I've been able to go to one school who wanted to do 6 weeks and say, look, can't. This is what forest school is. It needs to be a minimum of 12 weeks, 2 years in a row, and I've been able to say that to them, and they've changed what they do because of it. So
maybe it should be slight stretch goals. Maybe it's the idea is to push everybody, and then in a few years' time we should review and get it to 18 weeks, and we should be. The goal should be that these standards, the principles, keep moving up and going. Right, now we've got 200 practitioners in the UK that are doing these things that we want to crank them all up, we get them closer to that full fat forest school, and
maybe start off with something like registered providers, and then you could go on to a registered provider with a star or something. Do you know what I mean? Do you know if you want
Trustpilot rating?
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's interesting, isn't it?
If you wanted to build up more hours.
But I do think as well. So one of the advantages, even if you didn't have the FSA, one of the advantages of going to the gathering is being meeting up with other forest school leaders, is being bolstered that even if no one in your school would back you up, there would be 60 of us that would all email and go, if you said, right, could you email my head teacher? I think there'd be a heck of a lot of us that would email and say, hi, I just want you to know we're a registered forest school provider and this is what. And so meeting up can give you a bit of a team to
a bit of a boost, a bit of a confidence boost,
and validation for yourself,
and answers to what we. Like we were saying, you go to other sites and you work out, well, how did you do the toilets and how have you done your kitchen? You talk to other people and you go, how did you get your head teacher to approve this? And how did you get your... And sometimes it's so easy and people just go, oh, I did this and I did that. And
again, what I was going to say, it takes the isolation away from it again.
Yeah.
Because if you're fighting against something, you're with one school and you're fighting for something, you begin to feel lonely and isolated, like you're a little voice. Yeah. And then you go to a gathering and you meet all these other voices are going like, yeah, you're right. They validate what you're saying. You can go back stronger, can't you?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think we've wittered for quite long enough.
Oh, yes, I think.
Thank you very much for your time. Before we go, do you want to just again say where you're from again and how people can find you if they want to? If the people are in, where are you based?
Say right at the minute at the Wilderness Gathering. That's where I am.
You've got a workshop to run.
After today, Kay, where can people find you and where are you based and what's the?
I'm in Shepton Mallet in Somerset, and we are Holly and Hawthorne Forest School.
And where?
I'm Adrian Goodhand. I'm Coastal Forest Education, based in Dorset, but will travel
for food.
So I'm all over social media. I've got all the usual accounts: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
And you're doing some training this year, aren't you?
Yeah, so I'm starting my own first training as well. So I've been training with a couple of South Coast Wildlife Trusts over the last few years, and branching out for my very first course, level 3, starting with the Sustainability Centre in October. So sign up to that, folks.
Cool. Right. Thanks very much, guys. Bye.